Up next in the broadcast, Korea's central bank raises its growth outlook for the nation's economy this year to 4% after adopting new international standards on calculating GDP that include new categories like R&D spending. The main opposition party backtracks on its pledge to eliminate a political nomination system that critics say is rife with corruption and bribery. The nation's Supreme Court rules in favor of Korean cigarette company KT&G in a 15-year-long legal suit filed by lung cancer patients. Primetime News begins now.
Good evening to our viewers in Korea, and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Thursday, April 10th here in Seoul. I'm Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with the backtracking of a major campaign pledge by Korea's newly merged main opposition party. Just under a month old, the New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party was supposed to make waves in the political world by scrapping a nomination system that's been accused of being rife with corruption and bribery.
The ruling Saenuri Party was quick to pounce with criticism, but it too will adopt the same type of system for nominating candidates for local elections in June. Our political correspondent Kim Young-gil reports on how it may now be politics as usual.
The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy announced Thursday that the party will field candidates for lower-level administration chiefs and councillors in the June local elections, reversing an earlier pledge to abolish the nomination system altogether. The party reached the decision after a public opinion survey and an intra-party vote.
The results reflect 50% of the vote from each side, the party member voters and public opinion survey. 53.44% were in favor of the party nomination system, while 46.56% were against it.
Both of the party's co-leaders said they would honor the results.
From today, I will do my best to win the June local elections. We have a rough road ahead, but I ask for the support of our party members. If we do not bring about reform, we will not win in the next presidential election.
The party will field candidates for the June local elections. We will bring an end to the controversies over the nominating system. We will stop President Park Geun-hye and the ruling party from winning, as they have broken their promises with the people.
The ruling Saenuri Party immediately criticized the decision, saying the newly unified opposition party had already thrown away its bid for New Politics by overturning numerous promises. New Politics has been An's trademark policy since he entered politics in 2012. He says it's aimed at restoring public confidence by eliminating corruption and having politicians lay down their vested interests. Abolishing the party-standard nomination system was a key campaign pledge of both the ruling and opposition parties during the 2012 presidential campaigns, with many believing it acts as a breeding ground for bribery and corruption. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
For the first time ever, the nation's top court has spoken out in a lawsuit filed by 6 smokers who sued the country's biggest tobacco company.
The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the cigarette maker. Our Kwon So-hwa has more on the landmark ruling.
A 15-year-long legal battle between cancer patients and Korean cigarette maker KT&G has come to an end, and the tobacco company has come out on top. The Supreme Court ruled Thursday against patients who claimed that their years of smoking had caused their cancer. The dispute dates back to 1999, when 36 people, including 7 cancer patients and their families, filed lawsuits against KT&G and the country, demanding financial compensation. They alleged that the company had used chemical additives to enhance the effect of their cigarettes. The Supreme Court said in its ruling Thursday that there wasn't enough evidence to prove the claim. Back in 2007, the Seoul District Court said there was no evidence that cancer was directly caused by smoking cigarettes. 4 years later, the Seoul High Court did acknowledge that there was a cause and effect relationship between smoking and lung cancer in 4 patients. but that there was still no proof that KT&G gave false information about their cigarettes. A total of 4 tobacco-related lawsuits have been filed in Korea, but so far, none of the plaintiffs have won their cases.
I don't think this should be a matter of filing a lawsuit. Everyone knows there is a high risk of getting cancer when you smoke.
I feel like the court's ruling shows a lack of trust from the people towards the country. That's why I think there should be some compensation or an apology.
Legal experts say in the case of individuals, a case-by-case investigation is required on when the plaintiff started to smoke, when the cancer appeared, and a whole host of other factors.
If more tobacco-related lawsuits are filed in this way, there is a low chance that the plaintiffs will win. If they focus more on issues like unfair profits, they might have more success.
This could be the case in the near future, as the National Health Insurance Service is expected to file a lawsuit against KT&G soon, which would shift the focus from individuals to public organizations. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Korea's central bank expects the domestic economy to grow 4% this year, up 0.2 percentage points from the earlier estimate.
This came after the rate-setting session on Thursday, where the BOK decided to leave the key rate unchanged. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
The Bank of Korea says the domestic economy is beginning to return to its normal growth track. In its new growth outlook released Thursday, the central bank forecasts the Korean economy to grow 4% this year compared to 3% growth in 2013.
The pace of recovery we're seeing now is 4% annual growth. This is matching up with the nation's potential growth rate.
The new growth forecast is up 0.2 percentage points from the central bank's earlier outlook in January. But the bank said the upward revision does not mean the domestic economy is on track to a stronger recovery. Instead, it cited the central bank's recently adopted new international standards on calculating gross domestic product.
The new standards, which include contributions from new sectors like research and development, mainly led the rise in the growth forecast. The outlook itself is not that different from January.
For next year, the bank expects the Korean economy to grow 4.2%, also up 0.2 percentage points. However, it lowered the nation's inflation outlook for this year to 2.1%, citing a drop in prices of agricultural products in the first quarter. The Bank of Korea also left its key interest rate unchanged at 2.5% for the 11th straight month in April, as widely expected. The central bank went on to say that there could be a rate hike in the second half of this year if inflation goes up. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Korea's benchmark broke the 2,000 mark for the first time this year on Thursday, gaining more than 9 points or 0.5% from the previous day, despite an unexpected drop in China exports last month.
It was the third straight day of gains, with foreign investors buying around $300 million of shares. The Kosdaq also gained 0.5%. Meanwhile, the Korean won closed trading at 1,040 won to the greenback after hitting a new 68-month high against the U.S. dollar in the morning. The strengthening of the won is leading to fears that it may affect the price competitiveness of Korean exporters. In response, the Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol signaled a possible intervention in the market if there's too much volatility.
If everything goes according to plan, Korea will have a leaner fighting. The President
Your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang's Sean Lim and Yoo Ji-hye from the heart of Seoul. Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Next general elections.
Diplomatic efforts for resuming the long-stalled six-party nuclear talks are underway once again, on the heels of a three-way meeting between the nuclear envoys of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan earlier this week. Seoul's chief delegate heads to China for a two-day meeting focused on North Korea. Our Connie Kim reports.
In efforts to make a breakthrough in resuming the stalled six-party talks, South Korea's chief delegate Hwang Jung-guk will visit Beijing Friday to meet with his Chinese counterpart Woo Da-wei. Hwang will likely discuss the results of trilateral talks he attended in Washington with the U.S. and Japan. Their meeting is expected to draw specific measures and flexible preconditions to bring Pyongyang back to the negotiating table. Shortly after the bilateral meet, Wu will head to Washington to discuss the outcome of his 4-day trip to North Korea late last month and reopening the six-party talks. The news of Wu's upcoming trip comes a day after South Korea, the U.S., and Japan agreed to be more flexible when dealing with the communist state. The three nations have previously been firm on resuming talks only if Pyongyang took concrete steps to end its nuclear program. Now that all three nations appear ready to compromise, attention is turning to China and its role as mediator. Beijing remains as the secluded state's biggest ally, and narrowing down the different political interests of involved parties may be the biggest factor in resuming the six-way talks with the North. While making inroads overseas on the issue, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se has warned Pyongyang that it'll pay an unimaginable cost should it carry out a fourth nuclear test. Speaking at a forum on reunification Thursday, Yoon said that the international community, including China, stands unified and is determined to denuclearize North Korea. The nuclear talks have been stalled since late 2008 over repeated provocations by Pyongyang. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Over to the second day of North Korea's first parliament under new leader Kim Jong-un, there are no significant changes in the latest personnel lineup in the north, which fuels speculation that North Korea is choosing stability over change. Our Hwang Sung-hee reads into the political workings of the isolated nation.
It was stability over change at North Korea's 13th Supreme People's Assembly session on Wednesday. The meeting of the country's top legislative body is an occasion to find out who's in and who's out of North Korea's ruling circle and to determine the direction of state policies. Prime Minister Park Bong-ju and figurehead President Kim Young-nam were widely expected to step down from their posts, but both remain in office.
The fact that there were no major changes to officials at key posts, no revisions to external and internal policies and constitutions, reflect the Kim Jong-un leadership will be focusing more on stability rather than change after 2 years in power.
Wednesday's session gave a peek into the isolated nation as the young Kim continues to solidify his power base. Choi Ryong-hae, the top political officer in North Korean People's Army who has emerged as a rising star under the young Kim, was promoted as one of the 3 vice chairmen of the powerful National Defense Commission. That seat was vacant since the execution of Chang Song-taek, once the second most powerful man in North Korea.
Choi Ryong-hae is now Kim's closest aide both at the party and military, and therefore we can say he's the second most powerful man.
Experts say the appointment of Lee Soo-yong, the former ambassador to Switzerland, as North Korea's new foreign minister suggests the regime will bolster efforts in attracting foreign investment from the Western world.
But some don't expect any major changes until next year, which is the 70th anniversary of the founding of the Workers' Party of Korea. Experts say this is when a new Kim Jong-un-style governing system and policies could be unveiled. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Korea's domestic film industry has been enjoying steady growth over the past few years. The number of film ticket sales broke the 200 million mark last year, meaning each person watched about 4 films in theaters on average.
Unfortunately, the enjoyment is easier to find for some more than others in the nation. And to tell us more about this trend, we bring in our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won in the studio. So Ji-won, tell us more about this discrepancy.
Well, the disparity is pretty severe. For instance, Seoul residents watched about 6 films on average last year, while residents in rural areas watched just 2. Well, that's because many rural areas don't even have theaters. Well, in fact, out of the nation's 230 districts or counties, over 100 don't have theater, most of them rural areas. Well, it's not that they never had a theater in the past. Many ran out of business in the late 1990s when theaters began going the multiplex route. But many are hoping to make a comeback, and Hongcheon County is one of them. And I paid a visit earlier this week. Hongcheon County in Gangwon-do Province lies some 100 kilometers east of Seoul, and until this week, residents would have to travel about an hour if they wanted to watch a movie in the theater. But the opening of a small digital film theater in Hongcheon this week has changed that.
I only watched probably 3 films a year. Now I hope to watch more films as the theater is very close to my home.
I had to watch films in Chuncheon or in Seoul because there weren't any cultural centers or theaters here.
Hongcheon Cinema is the nation's 4th small digital film theater to open in counties with a population of less than 100,000. The first was in Changsu in 2010, followed by others in Kimje and Imsi last year, all financed by their local governments. Based on the success, the nation's cultural ministry is joining in. New initiatives are in place to support the opening of 18 more small theaters in rural areas nationwide by next year. The ultimate planning is to set up a small film theater in every district or county that does not currently have one.
So that's the regional gap. How is the nation's independent film sector at odds with the big megaplexes that distribute the films?
Well, that's pretty severe as well. Among some 200 films made each year in Korea, more than half of them can be categorized as independent films made without any investment. But half of those independent films don't even get a chance to be seen by theater audiences. Audience numbers for independent films have been on the decline since 2009. At the same time, the market share of the top 10 films last year reached some 35%, much higher than in the US at 24% and France at 26%. This is because nearly 95% of the nation's 2,100 screens are operated by the 3 major multiplex chains, CGV, Lotte, and Megabox. All are conglomerates, and they mainly play films that they have produced or invested in. For this reason, it's becoming harder for independent film lovers to find the film that suit their tastes.
Since there are not many theaters that play independent films, it's hard to watch them and have to go far away. I wish more screens showed them.
There are many independent films I wasn't able to watch because the show times did not fit my schedule.
An independent film director who has received many international awards says he still has a hard time finding screens to play his films.
Multiplex chains do not offer their screens up unless it's a film produced or distributed by their own companies. Even if they do, they show them at very unpopular times, like once in the early morning or very late at night. It's unfair.
So he added policymakers and movie fans need to pay attention to low-budget art films or those independent films if they want diversity in the cinema.
All right, thank you very much, Ji-won, for that report. It's time to check on stories making headlines on the global front, from school stabbing in the U.S. to a major cabinet reshuffle in France. We go live to our Paul Lee at the News Center.
Paul, let's start with a mass stabbing attack at a school in the U.S. state of Pennsylvania. Have police identified the main suspect?
Local police officials have identified the 16-year-old suspect as Alex Riebel, a student of Franklin Regional High School in Murraysville, Pennsylvania. Riebel allegedly went on a 30-minute rampage early Wednesday morning, slashing and stabbing 21 students and 1 security guard at the school before he was tackled to the ground by an assistant principal. Riebel is in police custody and being charged as an adult with 4 counts of attempted homicide and 21 counts of aggravated assault. The victims, some as young as 14 years old, were rushed to nearby hospitals, with several being treated for serious injuries. Fortunately, doctors say all of them are expected to survive. And turning now to the deepening crisis in Ukraine, pro-Russian demonstrators continue to occupy several government buildings in the eastern part of the country. Ukraine's Interior Ministry Arsen Avakov has warned the protesters that the situation would be resolved within 48 hours, either through negotiations or a show of force. Avakov added on Wednesday that an anti-terrorist operation was underway in the eastern cities of Donetsk, Kharkiv, and Luhansk, where pro-Russian separatists are standing ground while holding cautious talks with authorities. The activist groups are demanding Crimea-style referendums to signal their independence from Kiev. The Ukrainian government says Russia is orchestrating the unrest to destabilize the country. It's an accusation that Moscow continues to deny. And lastly, France is undergoing a major cabinet reshuffle following last month's elections. And it looks like a famous French-Korean adoptee has grabbed a top government post. Former Junior Minister Fleur Pellerin has been named France's new state secretary for foreign trade and tourism. Pellerin was previously in charge of Paris's digital economy and innovation. She was widely praised among industry leaders for her work, which caught the eye of new Prime Minister Manuel Valls. Born in Korea and adopted by French parents, Pellerin is the first ethnic Korean to hold a ministerial post in France. That wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. FIFA's latest rankings are out, and South Korea improved to 56th in the world. Although it won't affect their World Cup berth and is largely symbolic, there's still much to be desired. They jumped up 4 spots but still fell short of breaking into the top 3 in Asia. Iran ranked in at 37th, Japan at 47th, and Uzbekistan at 53rd to stand ahead of South Korea and atop the AFC. Meanwhile, Spain and Germany remain steady at 1st and 2nd, with Portugal jumping a spot to 3rd. Now from the best nations to the best clubs in the world, the Champions League is gearing up for the semifinals after Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid advanced. Bayern took down Man U 3-1 in the second leg for the 4-2 aggregate win, while Atletico stunned Barcelona to move up on 2-1 aggregates after an early deciding goal by Koke. Now the semi-final matchups will be decided in a draw taking place in the Swiss town of Nyon on Friday at 12 p.m. local time. And heading to the fairways, the PGA Tour's first major of the year, the Masters, has teed off in Augusta, and all the top pros are there. Except, of course, top-ranked Tiger Woods, who's missing the tournament for the first time in his career after having surgery for a pinched nerve in his back. Either way, play continues on as Adam Scott, Phil Mickelson, and other top pros compete on the field to win a coveted green jacket. Now let's get to Thursday's top matches, starting in the KBO. The NC Dinos hosted the Hanwha Eagles in Masan. Now getting straight to it, it's the first inning. NC's Kim Jong-ho, he triples and he later comes home. It's 1-0. Now Hanwha answers back with Kim Hee-sung's solo shot in the second and 2 more in the third. It's 3-1 Hanwha. Now NC gets one back in the fourth on Lee Jong-uk's sac fly and ties it up in the sixth, but in the top of the ninth, Hanwha scores the tiebreaker, and it's still at the bottom of the ninth, 4-3. And let's take a look at the other games. We have Tusan defeating SK 5-0, Lotte over LG 4-1, and Nexon defeating Kia 5-2. And now over to the KBL. It's Game 6 of the championships between the LG Sakers and Mobis Phoebus. Now if Mobis wins here, they win it all. And they press hard, earning themselves a 4-point cushion at the half. Now LG picks up the action in the third, but it's Mobis' Moon Tae-young on a mission. He scores 25 on the night with 11 boards, and Mobis wins 79-76 to win the game and becomes the 2014 KBL champions. So congratulations to them. And that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
Well, today was certainly a perfect day for outdoor activities with warm spring conditions and breezy winds.
And for more, let's turn things over to our Kim Bo-kyung, who is joining us here in the studio. Bo-kyung, what's in store for us tomorrow?
Well, guys, make sure to enjoy this lovely spring weather while you can. But as for now, dry weather advisories continue mostly in the southern regions, so please stay on the lookout for forest fires. Temperatures will remain above the seasonal average range, and showers are forecast in Jeju and the southern regions on Sunday, and this will hopefully take away some of the dry air. Over to our satellite map, the nation is at the edge of a high pressure system from China, which is why we are seeing cloudy skies in some regions. Tomorrow looks to be another wonderful spring day with daytime highs across the country reaching between 15 to 23 degrees. Looking ahead at tomorrow's readings, Seoul and Daegu hit the low 20s, Gwangju and Busan peak at 23 and 19 degrees. Down on Jeju Island, daytime highs will reach 19 degrees. Dokdo and Mount Kumgang make it to the low teens. That's all the updates I have for you this hour, but I'll be back with more after midnight.
Right, thanks, Bo-kyung. And that's a broadcast on this Thursday night. I'm Yuji Hain, Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.